2, Village of Chester Secondary Planning Strategy, the final draft for first reading.
Oh, right.
Or at least that's what it says. Final draft. Whatever.
Good morning, Council.
Good morning.
Just as a quick recap, so the last time we were here with the village plan review, it was following our couple of public meetings that we held in March. We brought back a series of comments and proposed changes or questions, issues, and we went through those and got direction to make almost all of those changes with a couple of exceptions. And so what you see today is the next draft of the documents, and it includes those changes that were decided on the last time this was at council, as well as the work that's been done lately on the marine development zone. That was one of the items that we didn't have specific direction on because there was essentially direction to go out and try to meet with both sides and see what kind of a compromise we could come up with from how it was previously proposed. So you'll see that here, and then obviously, as you heard earlier, and as you will hear following my presentation from Lloyd, there is a request not to give the documents first reading today and to go spend more time to continue to work on this compromise. So that will be council's decision whether they wish to do that.
I don't want to shorten things up or anything like that, but we've had essentially 2 requests this morning. Well, we might end up with more than that because we have another presentation. But essentially they've asked for a little bit more time for you to meet with both groups together on the waterfront, marine development zone.
Yep.
Yeah. And then we've had a request from Tristan on a slight change
The rezoning. Yep.
or don't rezone it again. I mean, there's a lot in here, and I'm not going to say there's not, and people might.
There's a couple of other items, like Lordley Park, that we want to adjust given the new agreement with the Heritage Society. And Garth is going to speak to that. I think that's part of what he's going to speak to. So there are some.
Is he going to speak to that in this session? No.
Well, I was prepared to present the draft, and then Derek and I had spoken about a couple of small changes, one of which was rezoning Lordley Park. So I was going to introduce that and say if council wished to give the documents first reading, they could do so with direction to rezone Lordley Park to Parks as open space, and there was one other minor portable signage change that we had discussed. So I think council's options today would be send it back for further work.
Well, I guess that's where I'm coming from.
Sorry.
We can go through this first draft. You basically know that these 2 groups want to meet with you. You basically know that Tristan wants a slight variation in the way it's presented at the moment. We know that we want to add something about Lordley Park. I'm not trying to.
Well, can I interject something? I've talked to the parties.
Yeah.
And it is my wish that we can find some type of solution that keeps the neighbors happy. And we were assured that we're that close. I think it was that, or was it that close?
I was this close.
Oh, this close. I'm not prepared to put it out beyond the next council meeting.
No, that's where I was heading from. I mean, on the 20th of June, one way or the other,
yes,
we have to give first notice.
Yes.
Because we're running out of time. But I don't want to waste Garth's time running through every piece of this when we basically agree with most of it, with the exception of there's these couple of issues that need to be dealt with.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the one that Tristan mentioned this morning, I'd like to have, do we have a map, Garth, that we can look at so we can see where it is and whether.
I just want to see where you want to go with this today.
That's one I'd like to discuss, but I'd see the rest coming back on the 20th.
So you'd like to discuss that one today?
I would.
If there's a map.
Just a second, Andre.
I agree. I would like to have a quick look at that. You know, I know we're pressed for time. Also, on the marine industrial zone, I wouldn't mind having a brief discussion about exactly where we are in the discussion right now, because those that haven't been party to that directly took part of this. We're seeing correspondence flying around.
No, I think that's fair. I think that Gareth's prepared to do that. I don't know words in his mouth, but I think that's.
I have my own thoughts on the matter, of course.
Yeah, he's put a lot of time in it. We've had meetings with both, and I've gotten a number of emails.
Well, I mean, if you want to go through the whole report and do the presentation,
I don't think, like, there's a lot of it, I think that we've been through probably 7 or 8 times.
If we don't think we're going to get first reading, I would agree that much of it would be redundant to go through today.
That's all I'm trying to suggest.
Yeah, let's just hit the pain points.
You're not speaking yet.
But can I make a comment on your proposal? I partially like your proposal, but I'd like to make a comment.
Make a quick comment.
Okay.
It's gonna be quick.
Thank you very much. June 20th,
Name?
Lloyd Robbins, 93 Granite Street, sorry. June 20th gives us some time. What I'm trying to understand is, I understand from talking to Councillor Wells that everyone, probably including us, wants this done before October.
Yes.
But my problem is with June 20th, it's sink or fly or sink, whatever. 20 days is a little too short. If we could pick a council meeting June 30th into July, not interfering with your October
June 20th is
deadline.
the conference. June 20th is the date. I can assure you, next council meeting, there's going to be a motion that I will make to take this to public hearing.
Yeah.
And it's up to the parties if they want to compromise between now and the 20th to do something. That's it.
I think that's where we are.
Ample warning, that's what is going to happen.
That gives you 21 days.
And that's first reading.
Yeah.
That's first
That's for
reading.
public hearing. That's when the debate is supposed to happen.
No, well, I guess I'm supposed to speak short right now. I guess, do I have a chance to speak after Garth still?
Yes, you do. But
Thank you.
he has an appointment. He has an appointment, so yes.
Cool.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
but that's where we're at. So,
Let's talk about the pain.
but for what?
Yeah, talk about that.
The pain. The pain points.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, so I think there are 4 potential changes on my list. One is rezone Lordley Park to Parks and Open Space. I think if council is in agreement with that, that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
The second one is one that Councillor Wells and I had discussed, which hasn't come up yet during plan review at all, which is around portable signage, which is the A-frame type signage.
Sandwich signs.
Yeah, sandwich board signs. So currently, they're restricted in where they can be located. They have to be either on the property for the business that it serves, or they have to be directly in front of the property on the sidewalk or the road shoulder.
Yeah.
The item that we were discussing was whether there should be a little bit of flexibility as to whether those signs can be located within a distance of the building with consent of whoever owns in front. So you couldn't go put it in front of your competitor. They would have to sign off, if it was 2 coffee shops or 2 bars or 2 restaurants. There's an example of a sign that currently isn't in compliance. And I don't want to point it out, but basically it's being used on an intersection to kind of drive traffic around the corner to help people find the business. And that felt like a reasonable change. So
Relatively
what we would potentially look to do is they write in an allowance to say same rules except within 100 meters of the building rather than directly in front of the
With permission from the building.
with permission. Yeah.
Sounds good.
So those 2 I think are fairly
Those are
minor in
simple
nature,
ones.
fairly straightforward. The next the rezoning that Tristan proposed this morning, that is I can try to point those out here. So the Independent, if we can all picture where that is on Duke Street, it's the 2 properties immediately south of Peterson Drive. So between the Independent and Main Street, essentially, it's these 2 lots there. They were previously zoned.
Can you blow that up for a moment?
Nothing, sorry.
Yeah,
That's better.
these 2 here. Whoop, yeah.
Okay, good.
That's great. Yeah, so it's these 2 lots here that front onto Duke Street. Previously those were zoned essentially R3, the low density residential zone, as was this entire strip that came through here. So the entire strip has been proposed to change to R2. And so Part of the reason for that was to have the architectural area apply to those properties, because there'd been some developments out here at the end of Queen Street that had received some feedback that they didn't comply with the architectural designs. So in part, that was why that change was made. So it's those two properties there, and it would be a matter of, if they were to revert to R3, we'd have to consider redrawing the architectural control line, because typically anywhere the R3 zone occurs, the architectural control zone does not occur. So that we'd have to work that out. There also are two properties there, so I think we would want confirmation from both property owners that both were in favor of the change. That would be consistent with how council's handled the McDonald properties on Highway 3 and also the property that Hassan.
Basically a match.
Right, yeah, so I think we could accomplish that. Generally, we would look for the property owner's buy-in to rezone, so.
Well, I mean, I don't know whether it seems reasonable to me, but I don't know, Gary, you know, I mean, if we're gonna go down that road and give you that work, then.
So I could pursue reaching out to both property owners just to confirm, provide the information, and then get their input, and if they were both in favor, come back with that change made.
Andre.
So Garth, what do you think about this idea from a planning perspective? It just, the thing that bothers me a bit, not that I'm opposed necessarily yet, but I don't like the idea of just placing a couple of properties in a little island. That really doesn't, I don't really like that. So what do you think about this from a planning perspective?
Yeah, my understanding is the reason for the request is to try to, you know, increase the number of units that can be developed on the site. So in that sense, I think I think it you know, more units along that Duke Street corridor potentially could be viable. It's really more a matter of like wrangling sort of the character area and the architectural control zone. It is a little unfortunate that it would kind of create an island, and like I said previously, that whole swath would have been LR. So I don't think we want to consider changing it all back to R3. So yeah, it is a little tricky from that perspective. It would also, you know, generally the commercial zone is the boundary of the architectural line. So there's some. It's not ideal, I guess, you know, but I also understand why the request is being made, because you could see multi-unit.
That's my concern, I guess, is because Duke Street is kind of like one of the main arteries into the village, and once you pass the commercial, then you're sort of in the sort of like what people think of as Chester and that feeling of it. And I don't want to allow a use that will sort of impact that negatively. So whatever you come back with, you know, it will have to be defendable from that perspective, I feel, because that's like.
What additional flexibility would
with the zone, so the primary, so R2, as it sits today, or is proposed today, I should say, would allow a 2-unit dwelling. And then, as we've talked about, subject to lot coverage provisions and everything else, you could also have the accessory dwelling unit. So potentially up to 3, assuming they could meet all the setback requirements and lot coverage requirements here.
that would be allowed?
That would be allowed as proposed, And then the R3, the request, would allow up to a triplex through permit, and it would also open it up to a multi-unit development by development agreement. So
how big are those lots?
I don't know off the top of my head. I mean, you know, they're in the. They're
60,000.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
So right now they're permitted 3. Theoretically, you could get 3 units.
3 units,
each lot.
a 2-unit and the accessory. Yeah. That's right.
With coverage provision.
Which lot coverage first? And it should be noted that those lot coverage provisions would go away if the R3 zone came in, because the R3 zone is generally the one that we use on the outskirts. So it is a.
Yeah, what, sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
What if we did it the other way? Because I don't like the spot zoning idea either. If we brought the highway commercial zone down to a certain extent, what difference would that make? And I'm not particularly wanting that, I'm just asking what it would mean.
That would actually be probably less desirable from the applicant, or from Tristan's perspective of the applicant.
That's not where I'm looking at it from.
Okay.
Sorry, Tristan, I'm looking at it from the community perspective.
So a highway commercial, the only way you can do residential in highway commercial is if it's in the same structure as a commercial building. So there has to be sort of a mixed use type
I
development.
think we want that.
Yeah.
That would take away the residential.
Yeah.
So we wanted to look at that or not?
Well, 3 buildings to be put on one lot, I think that's enough, and you have to consider water and everything else.
3 units, it wouldn't be necessarily 3 separate buildings, I assume it would be a
A duplex and then another
And
building.
then potentially a third, or a second building.
That's what's allowed with the proposed.
Yeah, as it is there,
That's 3 homes.
Yeah.
They're all gonna need water, so, you know, you start adding a lot of density.
I think I'm worried about the character aspect, because you can push these buildings, you can really fill up that lot.
Yeah.
And so we're not very experienced in dealing with DAs at this point. And, it's just, until we get a little bit more, we're not very good at strengthening our resolve when we have opposition. So I feel like, I'm not really thrilled about the idea. Sorry, Tristan.
It's all good. I'm going to give Garth to work.
No, we're not gonna change it, I don't.
Is there any reason you would recommend it, Garth?
Generally, I share many of the sentiments I think that are being expressed here. I'm leaning towards no, I guess, if you're putting me on the spot.
I apologize, I've been put on the spot a little bit.
No,
the
understood.
last couple of months.
Yep.
And I'm certainly reluctant to basically spot zone. We have a policy not to do spot zoning. We're not gonna change anything else. We have an R3 right in the middle of the R2.
Well, we need to give Garth direction.
Well,
Leave it alone.
Don't go and do extra work
Sorry,
on it.
yeah. I don't apologize to people.
Well, if he doesn't, when it goes to public hearing, he can still come in and do the presentation, that's the idea.
And there is always the possibility, and I've said this to a lot of folks over the last couple of weeks, to request amendments down the road. So now, some of the arguments may be the same that you're up against, but there is obviously the ability to come in and request a group of properties or an individual property to be reconsidered down the road. Maybe once we
From my perspective, I feel like we've, the village is a very sensitive area, and to say the least, and we've pushed a little bit to allow a little bit more density by adding the in-law suite and stuff like that. I don't want to overstay my welcome here. I think that, I think we've asked a lot for those that are there to trust us, and I don't want to abuse that trust by pushing just a little too far.
I think we have a consensus that we're not happy with that change.
Okay, so your instructions are to go away, do something about the Lordley Park?
Yeah, so I've got Lordley Park and the little portable signs piece. We'll leave the rezoning. So then the last one is the marine
Yeah, try
development
to
zone.
meet those people and give us something that we can vote on the
Okay.
plan.
We'll come back with something.
No, there was.
I just wanted to say a couple words about that, because I'm not part of the conversation, but I'm seeing the correspondence flying around, and here's what I have to say about that. And, the zone right now, it's an industrial zone, okay? Right now it's used as a boatyard. It could be sold tomorrow, and it could be used as cut off salvage boats. From 7 o'clock in the morning until 11 o'clock at night, 7 days a week. And a lot of the arguments I continue to see are about like preserving the peace and quiet and all that stuff. And I you know, everybody wants that, of course. But it's an industrial zone right now. If we do nothing to this zone and we leave it as is, APCO could buy it and start cutting up scabs. And it's allowed. What we're trying to do, what this proposal that came from council is trying to make a more flexible space that actually would add protection to those residents that are behind. Right. So, you know, a residential use, for example, would be a lot, I think a lot more palpable to those residents than if under the same industrial use was actually used in a more industrial fashion that is currently permitted. So, you know, I really hope that those that are opposing change or strictly thinking from their own perspective what doing nothing could mean to them. Because that is an option that's available to us, is to leave it as is. And someday, 10 years from now, if Eileen were to sell to some person, they could have something that's not a boat yard at all, that's very, very industrial, and is permitted as of right now. So things like site plans or trying to put restrictions on numbers of residential units that are even less dense than those in the surrounding areas, I think that's very unfair to this. And what we're trying to do is create a way that they can operate a marina type facility, which is reasonable, but make it flexible enough that it actually is a viable business.
Exactly right.
And that's what my hope of this whole discussion is, and I hope that when these parties go away and talk, they can at least have some empathy for those business owners, because I think at this point they want to run it as a boat yard. But should they say to throw up their hands and say this thing doesn't make sense, it doesn't make money, and they sell, and somebody wants to cut up derelict vehicles there, they're allowed to do that today. And that's their option. And we're trying to, this effort is to try to prevent that from happening, is to protect the neighbors, but also to make a boat yard more viable. And modern boat yards, if you travel around, if you go down the eastern shore, the seaboard down in the US, you'll find that it's very common to have mixed use where there's some residential component to these marinas. I would, those that are involved in the discussion, I would recommend that they investigate that. And I even suggested offline to Garth, you know, maybe we even allow density bonuses or something like that. Should they offer like a public access component, you know, something so that it's a give and take. These are just discussion points, but I wanted to say those things because it's really important that both sides understand the threat that they're under. Because if we do nothing, what's there today may not be there tomorrow, and it could be far worse than what we're proposing.
And if I could just offer a couple notes, knowing that someone is going to come speak after me, there are. Thank you, Councillor Bino, and Councillor Wells as well. We have. The last time we were here, the direction was to go out and meet with the boatyard owners and meet with the neighbors, come to a compromise or a resolution, and come back. Inadvertently, I'll say, because I believe that was the case, the meeting that occurred wasn't a collective. It was, we met with the neighboring property owners first, and then we met with the boatyard owners. And then there was a request for further meetings. And I said, look, we've done what council directed us to do. And just as a synopsis, the initial marine development zone that was proposed initially is different than what's here today. Essentially what this draft represents is a scaled back version of what was in there. We've added, as was mentioned, a density provision for the tourist accommodation units. Now Lloyd disagrees with me on the definition of a unit. I've checked with our development officers and I am confident that as written is correct. That's just one of those ones where, in my opinion, it's an agree to disagree, although he doesn't agree to that. So we've added a density provision for tourist accommodations, 1 per 700 meters, which, as Councillor Vino mentioned, is more restrictive than the surrounding residential properties. Yeah. And I think there's a reason. I think there's some logic there, because the marine development zone has other options that those residential properties don't. So we've added that. We've added policies so that anything that goes through DA needs to be sensitive in terms of massing and building height. One thing that's come up in public presentations today, as well as some of the appointments, we are not able to protect private view planes. That's not something we do through the MGA. So if somebody builds in front of you, that is not our problem, and that is not something legally or that we don't do that. So I think actually gone quite far to add policies to say to be sensitive and similar to, and in terms of massing and height, but that's as far as we can go. We can't say you can't block the view of 76 Granite Street or whatever. So I do think if we go back to meet, I don't think we're as close as has been made out to say. The boatyard owners are very unhappy with this zone as proposed now because it's stepped back from what they appreciated the first draft. I had correspondence from both saying they liked the first zone. They didn't like these changes because it swings back. So I'm not sure we're going to get consensus, and it could swing back the other way. There's a risk that this draft, as it is, there could be, we may go back, we may find the balance is actually going back the other direction. We've removed restaurants and we've limited the tourist accommodations. And the whole issue that you heard that presented to you was around wedding venues and wanting to, restrict that. So I feel that we've gone a long way in that direction. And what you may or may not hear, but what I have heard is to Councillor Vino's point, almost a desire to plan those lots for the property owners. And that's generally not, and you hear the no's behind me now, but that is what has been expressed. They're saying this size of unit located in this part of the lot to a maximum of this number. So, and that's generally not how we need to allow those property owners to have a valuable property and business case as well. And that's what I've attempted to do with this zone. So I will follow your direction and go back and meet, but I'm just saying I don't know that there's consensus to be found. If there is, fantastic. I just don't know that it's that simple.
Look, I appreciate the effort and time that you put into it, and I know you've done your best. But we can give them one more kick at the can if they.
We've got a new
We're
council.
going to do something on the 20th, one way or the other.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Thanks, Gary. Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to say one thing. I was offered a couple of million or more, and I turned it down because heritage was more important than the money on my end.
Thank you. Okay, Lloyd, you're up. Try to be as quick as you possibly can. Put it that way.
I can see from being here, this is my first time here, that you're a very busy council.
Yes.
And so I appreciate the chance to speak to you. Thank you very much. And I will try to be perhaps briefer than I would have been if we were going for June 20th. But I want to say that we understand, we being the residential community around the sites, understand the importance of maintaining the viability of at least the marina part. If not, boat building is probably unfortunately past, but marina is still there. I'm a boat owner. I'm on one of Eileen's moorings. So making the marina viable is very important. But one of the early policies in the plan, it might be an objective, I think it's CV6. And what CV6 says is to ensure compatibility of uses throughout the village. I'm paraphrasing, that's not the exact words. And that's all we're trying to succeed in. And we were presented with the current wording 6 days before today. From my perspective, not enough time to really consider it and really think about it and really interact, perhaps with Garth, with anybody, or Councillor Wells. And I'm concerned that this June 20th deadline is going to run into the same problem. And to understand my concern, there's been talk today about going down to 4 tourist accommodation units. And when I read what was in the zone, and then I went to the definition of tourist accommodation. Tourist accommodation says a building or a structure for the purposes of, now I'm paraphrasing, a hotel, which is paraphrasing it. If we could get the section up. There it is. Good. It means a building or establishment which provides accommodation for the traveling public. So right now, in what you were going to be voting on, but now is delayed, you were going to be voting on something that Garth has acknowledged that Lloyd doesn't agree with the definition. And the reason I don't is because what you put in the zoning bylaw, or what was put in, was tourist accommodation and unit at the end of it. There is no definition of tourist accommodation unit in the plan. So, but there is tourist accommodation being a building. So if I was at the UARB or anything else, I would be sitting there saying, well, it doesn't say a single 1-bedroom cottage. It says a building. And this is a strictly legal argument, and I would encourage Mr. Lamy to be in on how we get to the wording on that. And I would like his participation before June 20th. Because I did make suggestions. You know, Garth suggests we're far apart. My first suggestion was put in a definition of tourist accommodation unit. Garth correctly pointed out to me, well, that could have ramifications in other areas of the village because there are other tourist accommodations. So then I said, well, then call it the Marine Tourist Accommodation Unit. And then we have something that just goes with the MD zone, and we can work with that. But as part of that definition, we want to just add that we realize that we don't have a right to protect our view, but that's not going to stop us from trying. But there should be a maximum size. We think 600 or 700 square feet. In every other zone in Chester Village, or residential zones, I can't say the commercials, I haven't really looked at them, we're limited to a certain percentage of lot coverage, or we're limited to a certain size. I would think that the same thing could happen with them and get a very reasonable Airbnb style function down there. And we wouldn't even want to link it to pure rental. If it's 600 or 700, a pure tourism thing, in our minds, if it's 600 or 700 square feet and somebody wants to move into it in the wintertime as affordable housing, whatever, no objection. So take the word tourist out of it. But the other thing, which is, you talk rightly about the concern that maybe you could reopen up as a boat building yard. That is a risk. When I moved in here in 2012, I knew that was a risk, but I looked at it and considered it and said, I'm a boat lover. If there's going to be boat building down there, no problem. You brought up the word somebody goes in there to cut out boats and salvage. Economically, unlikely, because that person would want to be getting trucks in and out. There's no room to get trucks in and out. That person would want lots of space around him in order to put his boats that he's broken up. So while it's possible, it's very unlikely, and that's a risk at this point that I live with, and I feel comfortable living with. But the other thing that when we had this meeting, we said in the positive vein that we are trying to exhibit, said, why isn't one of the uses an office or a marine store? And we talked about that. We talked about you could have an office here, and Garth did put in the wording about kayaks and things like that but our view of that was, again, something that, so what ended up in the thing was commercial uses of an unlimited size. Again, not what I have in my residential. When I moved here, I wanted to build a 2,000 square foot house, but because of the existing planning rules, I couldn't, because I didn't have the right
Plot space.
right plot, whatever. And there's a whole other story about that, but my point is, if as a residential property owner, I have to live within lot size, lot coverage, and rules like that, I would believe that a commercial operator, when they're in the middle of a residential neighborhood, would have to have similar type constraints. Not suggesting putting on constraints that means they can't do their business. Not at all. Not at all. There's a shed on the Heisler property right now. I have no objection to that shed. And it's a fairly big shed. I have no objection to it. But when the commercial marine section got there, it's an unlimited size. And in addition to being of unlimited size, it says marine uses including, and not limited to, including. And I think somebody here was talking about what happens around a marina down in the States. I'm not sure who raised it, but somebody did. And my thought goes to one of the uses that's around a marina is a bar. And that was part of the starting point of where we were. We were very concerned that what was happening with the restaurant and the tourist accommodation, which definitely was hotel at that point in time, was going to lead to a wedding venue. And I would urge councillors to go down and visit First South and talk to some of the people that live around there. They're not happy with what happened to them, and I don't want that to happen to me. And I don't think it is anymore. Restaurants have been taken out. I think that was a positive move. But if bars creep back in, and if tourism accommodation creeps back to being a hotel, then we're back having the same concern, unfortunately.
But that's why we've asked them to meet with both groups at the same time and try to come up with something that everybody can live with.
But that leads me, so I won't belabor my points on that. I think you understand them. But I'm very concerned that as to how much we can resolve. I think we can resolve tourist accommodation fairly easily by putting a new definition in, and if we put a maximum size of units in, I don't really care where they go in the lot. In my mind, where they should go is down by the water. But I'm not married to that. I am married to one thing. I don't want them up against my back fence. But
well, we're hopeful that you can resolve it.
well, no, let me close, please. That's the problem. We're positive, but we're a big group, and if we're trying to work to a June 20th deadline, then Garth almost needs to be assigned to come and live in our kitchen so that we've got time to do this. I'm being facetious, but I'm being serious, and that was why I asked the question that I respect your October deadline, totally respect it. I was a planner at one point, so I know the importance of that. But with an October deadline, is there some way we can move this perhaps to the July council or a special session of council?
You have your answer on that. We're going to be doing it on June 20th.
We've already given that direction. It's June 20th.
Well,
And that was the compromise. If you can't agree by June 20th, you're not going to agree. We're going to make the decision. But we're this close, we heard this morning.
Well, we're close, but it's subject to the magic of the wording.
Lloyd, I don't think, whatever we do.
We're not gonna make everybody happy. That's an impossible.
No, I'd rather just stay right like it is, sort of thing, but that's not gonna happen. So I know that, but that's why, but the wording is so important. And I don't know that there's time to get the wording together before June 20th. I don't know what Gar's schedule is. And
He's gonna do his best to work with you as much as he possibly can, so that he has something prepared for us on the 20th.
We will come back with something on the 20th.
Yes.
Who's making the decision that we've reached consensus? Because I have serious concern.
Oh, I'm not asking you to guarantee that.
No, but I'm,
You can only tell us what you heard.
but you're asking me on the 20th to come back with a draft, not options.
Based
So
on
how am I
the
making
best of your
decisions?
ability.
Okay,
Because
Best of your
you're
ability.
a trained planner, and you're
Okay.
gonna give us your best recommendation.
understood.
That's
So
okay.
consensus won't necessarily be what everyone
No,
else.
there's I don't believe there's gonna be consensus.
I don't expect you
That's
to come
not
back and get
realistic.
everybody happy.
So you're a city planner, you're gonna take the needs of those outside the zone and inside the zone, and you're gonna come back with your best recommendation. We're gonna discuss
can
it.
I ask one more thing then? I mentioned this early on. A lot of this, and the problem with resolution is related to the actual legal wording. Can Mr. Lamy be involved in these discussions, please?
Well, he'll be involved with Garth, that's for sure.
Well, I would like an opportunity to talk to Mr. Lamy.
No.
I'm a lawyer, one lawyer to another lawyer.
I mean, to be,
His job is to represent us,
You're
not.
not my client, I'll certainly hear whatever you have to say. And actually, I've been writing down what you have to say. I think I understand your point on the definition.
And you'll take a look at it and advise Garth.
and if you look in the land use bylaw, as we do in most commercial zones, tourist accommodations.
I did my best.
This isn't unique. So in this zone, we have it listed that tourist accommodations up to 1 unit per 700 meters square lot area. In the commercial zone, it says tourist accommodations of 4 or more units by development agreement. In the highway commercial zone, so this is, we use this unit language, and as I've explained to Lloyd, if a term isn't defined in the land use bylaw, we go to the typical dictionary definition of it. And I discussed this several times with our senior development officer, who's the one who interprets these rules. And she's comfortable with how it's written as well. So we can absolutely have Sam take a look at it. Sam reviews these documents anyway, but if we can send this particular comment on this
Well,
issue.
I do, because, but I mean, I'm looking at a big document.
Of course.
In a broad stroke.
Yeah,
So if something's,
we'll draw a particular
something
attention to this.
particular, then that's a whole different thing altogether.
Okay, Lloyd?
Thank you very much.
Okay, where am I? No. 10.1. This one should be easy. Request to fly over on Remembrance Day from the Air Force.
What's the motion?
Yeah.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, so carried. Hopefully they'll actually do it.
I will set up. Please don't reach out. I will reach out to everybody. You're asking, if you want to talk about it right now.
Oh, no, I'm just. Public hearing notice, 10.2.
I will set it. I'll send you all an invite. Don't appreciate it.
Public hearing notice, they just sent us that for information. Yeah, that's just information. 10.3, Minister of Environment, Climate Change response to correspondence sent regarding coastal protection, and we're having them come to meet this, or what?
No, unless you would like us to, we can do that.
Well, I mean, he's, all he's saying is he's working with us, right?
They offered to have Megan McMorris, the project director, come out and meet with us
Well, if we
individually.
Didn't we ask, oh, sorry, I should know this then, but didn't Councilor Vino send an email around, we should invite them in? Is this the one?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay,
So we're just
We'll
looking for
invite them in
direction.
whenever we can fit them on the schedule.
So we are gonna invite them in, we're just, it's
Yeah.
fitting, okay, good.
Okay. Okay, corporate strategic management, economic development sponsorship, that's essentially just information. Yeah. 11.2, financial information services procurement officer position.
Money. I like money.
No, this is getting stuff done. It's not just money,
Yeah.
right? This is, okay, so.
Anybody who doesn't think that we have a lot of stuff on the go.
Yeah, this is just formalizing some stuff that you would already have seen when we were talking about the budget, the succession planning for around the procurement function, as well as dealing with the surge in needs for procurement function in the coming year or two specifically. So we're looking to formalize the approval to create this new position, which will be a permanent full-time position. The scoring committee met on Monday, so I didn't have it in the agenda materials, but it scored out at a level 5, which is a step below what the current position is at, somewhat as expected. So in the long term, there will be a net savings to the general tax supported budget. In the short term, there will be a reserve funded increase for the 1 year where we have that overlap. Yeah, so there's, I don't know, I know we've been dealing with a lot of complicated stuff this morning, so I'll try and keep it simple for you. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
No, what are you looking for from us?
We're looking for approval to create that position and hire it. The funding for that will come from the general tax rate, which, like I said, will be a reduction in the long term, and the overlap will be funded from general operating reserve. It'll be, depending on who we hire and their experience, it'll be somewhere in the $40,000 to $50,000 for the current
Somebody
year.
prepared to move, we proceed?
So moved.
Seconder.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed, motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Infrastructure and operations resolutions for submission.
Morning all. I'll keep this brief. So basically we're looking to submit an application to the Provincial Capital Assistance Program. This is a program we've applied to numerous times before. This program is focused on various infrastructure categories: water, wastewater, solid waste. It's a 50-50 program in terms of matching dollars. We are proposing, or staff's proposing that we submit 2 applications. We can submit 2 applications, however, council would have to prioritize which one of those is the priority. So those 2 projects are the hydrological study in Robinson's Corner. The details are in the report about that, but if you have any questions, the scope of it is similar to what we did with the Marriotts Cove project, which would basically, we would contract the siting, design, drilling, test well run, and subsequent analysis to determine quality, quantity, and the sustainability of that proposed well site, should there be yield. So that's the scope of that project. The other one is a New Ross wastewater study, and this is basically to follow up on that aspect of looking to see what capacity exists for the New Ross Consolidated School wastewater system as a potential sort of partnership to provide expanded wastewater service to the New Ross community. So those are the 2. The estimated cost for the hydrological study is $130,000 inclusive of net HST. For the wastewater service study, it's $30,000 inclusive net HST. We're recommending that we submit both. Yeah. We're also recommending that council prioritize the hydrological study, mostly because if it's successful, it leverages a greater.
Gives us more money.
Gives us more money.
We can do the
That's
test
exactly
New Ross one, whether we have to get the funding.
That's exactly it. And currently, both projects are currently within the capital budget approved by council, so they're going to go ahead regardless.
Even if they don't give us any.
Exactly.
Yeah. So price of the 100 guys.
So a requirement of this program is, as you know, you've done this before, is a resolution of council determining, that you back the project submitted And in this case, and so
the
on.
wastewater study is priority.
Yeah, which one you want.
Well,
So,
I mean, it only makes logical sense.
the hydrological study?
Yeah, somebody move it?
I'll move it.
Seconder?
One question, what's the priority?
I just sort of, I was just gonna ask that, Councillor
The
Wells.
wastewater study.
No, can you,
No.
the wastewater study?
No, hydrological.
Hydrological study, right, okay,
Yeah.
right. Okay, thank you for that clarification. Thank
Who
you.
seconded it?
I did.
Okay, discussion, all those in favor, opposed, motion carried.
Outstanding, thank you,
Thank you.
thank you.
Good standing.
Oh, I don't doubt it. Yeah, okay, 11.4, I think I'm on. District grants?
Yeah, so we're into a new fiscal year, so we have kind of fresh budgets that no district grants have been allocated this year, so the budgets are all intact, and so there are 4 different requests that have come through for consideration today. And yeah, so there's one that is cross-cuts all districts, and that's a request from the Forest Heights Forum, which council has supported in the past, and I think they've been in touch with most councilors, and there's kind of an agreement there. So there's a request for $400 from each of the 7 districts for a total of $2,800. So that's that one, and then I'm kind of going backwards here, but we have a request from the Legion in New Ross for their Canada Day celebrations, a request of $1,000. The Hubbard's Radio Society Kitchen Party fundraiser, they've requested $500. And lastly, the Athenaeum Society of Nova Scotia is requesting $500. So in each of these cases, I believe that the councillors have been contacted and are in agreement. So I guess that they're up for kind of approval.
I'll move that we approve the grant request in all the districts.
Second. Discussion, all those in favor, opposed, motion carried. Oh, 11.5, planning matters, development owner application, Bureau of Lake Wind Farm.
Hello again.
Hello?
I just see that West Kansas expanded the setback requirements very significantly. That's where they're at in discussions anyway.
Very significant.
Yeah, from property lines.
Good for them.
Yeah, as you're aware, there's a proposal for 2 wind turbines with maximum 12 megawatt capacity and 207 meter height. The property is located on the boundary of Chester on Highway 14, in between Sherwood and Vaughan communities. It's about 4 kilometers north of the landfill. The property is 500 acres in area, and the turbine area is about 4 acres. It's a broader wind farm. There's 13 more in West Hants and Halifax. And Bear Lake Wind will be the developer, and they're leasing from Wagner Forest to have a lease for the use of the land from Atlantic Star Forestry. So they're the signatories on the DA. Electricity is tended to be used for a green hydrogen plant that is being developed in Point Tupper. And as far as the land use bylaw, a development agreement is required for wind turbines of this size. And that's high capacity electrical generation facility. There's existing forestry use and recreation, which will continue. There isn't really any residents or other sensitive uses in the area. And there's existing forestry roads that will be upgraded to accommodate the crane and the components. The applicants have received environmental assessment approval from the province, so they've studied the animal and plant species and some of the potential impacts from the development. And so the approval of that indicates that, everything's in order in that sense. We haven't really heard any opposition from the public. We had a public information meeting, and there was a few people there who had some technical questions about the green hydrogen environmental assessment. And then we also had a planning advisory committee, and all members were in favor of moving this forward. If you wanted to maybe move to the development agreement, and I'll just kind of go through some of the sections. So everyone has a better understanding of that. Go right down to the next document after this. So, is their typical structure of a development agreement. Everyone's kind of slightly different, so the type of development kind of dictates what's in there. So you see those are the parties keep going down. There's recitals that kind of say what land it is and what type of use it is. And then there's definitions that can define terms that are important in the agreement but aren't necessarily in the land use bylaw. I guess if you go to the use of land section, is kind of spells out what the use is. We've also added in that once the turbines are operating, if there's for some reason they stop operating for maintenance or something, there's like a 2-year period. If it's going to be more than that, then they need to let us know. I know South Canoe, there's some things like that coming up, so we've added that in.
Every once in a while they break.
Sorry?
Every once in a while they break.
So yeah, we've added some clause in for that. Period of construction is 2 years from the development permit. They have expressed some concern about there's some components that are hard to get, supply chain issues. So we landed on 2 years, and we'll talk about non-substantive in a minute. We didn't actually add in like you're allowed from 7 till 7, Monday to Saturday or anything like that, since
For the operation?
there's not really for the construction.
24 hours a day?
Construction.
Oh, okay, just the construction.
Sometimes we put that in there if there's like people right in the direct area. And they said, we don't want to do night work, but if we have to sometimes, they're erecting something. The setback and the structures section, so 310 meters is 1.5 times the turbine height, and that's in our policies as the minimum setback. As a caveat to that, the parcel directly south of it, and I think another one below that, are under the same ownership and are actually part of their lease for this broader wind farm. So I think there's a 96 meter setback there, but it's the same landowner and that. So the wording is set up to say like non-ownership parcels, they need a 310 meter setback. They have 318 from the highway, and they have 310 from a crown land property that's to the southeast. So their locations might change a little bit, but they need to make sure it's 310 at least for this.
Yeah.
Roads and parking, straightforward. They need to accommodate vehicles for emergencies. There's no formal line parking necessary, but they need to have a graveled area where people can park and turn around. Stormwater management, we did receive some preliminary plans, and Public Works took a quick look, and there were no major concerns, but they need to submit final design at the development permit stage. There's also they're still developing their plans, so it was kind of premature to make them do that now. Illumination, we do have a policy. I guess that's the one policy that they didn't really meet, is we have a policy that says no illumination, but Transport Canada has jurisdiction over that, so they have said you have to have lights on both turbines.
Yeah.
Signs, I spoke with the development officer, and if they want to have a sign for, this is turbine 14, they don't need a permit for that. If they did want other signs, they'd have to go through the proper channels for the land use bylaw. Operation and maintenance. So yeah, the structures need to keep in good order. roads need to be dust-free essentially, and then prohibit emissions. Fire prevention, of course, we mentioned having adequate access. The road needs to be of a certain quality to get the emergency management in. The applicants, for the development permit, we will have an emergency preparedness plan of some sort ironed out with the applicants, and they're actively trying to engage with the fire department. And we may get, I'm trying to get Primo to maybe comment on that as well, but that's down the road. Generally, fires for turbines are pretty rare, so it's, I think, more of a potential forest fire maybe impacting the turbine would be maybe more of a concern. So there are some of the mitigation, it's talked about in the environmental assessment report that went to the province, that having staff trained not to have a fire, smoke in a certain location, and also to keep the land around the turbine cleared is really important. So that'll be in that emergency preparedness plan. And actually just, West Hand says.
Yeah, I have a question around the process of the development agreement and fire service. The only example that I would use would be Salt Canoe, and my familiarity with that. And I know that, and I maybe wasn't listening as close to you as I should have. Did you say that you had the on-site visit and conversations and the check-off by the fire department?
It's right in the agreement that they have to consult with them to.
They have to, so they haven't yet.
They've reached out, and they haven't set a date yet.
No, I'm just thinking back on Salt Canoe, that's fine.
Yeah.
I believe that it was a requirement of us that they had consulted with the fire department and had the sign off by the fire chief and the department at that time, but that's a different example, of course. My memory may not be on a much larger scale, my memory may not be 100% on that, but I'm just curious, and I guess I'll just ask my fire chief at another time.
I think they did, and I think we required them to install a dry hydrant.
Exactly,
yeah, there was two actually, I think, for the South Canoe.
This is Chester and Area Fire Department, obviously. It's our municipality, so.
Chester Village Fire Department.
Chester Village, not Chester and Area, I'm sorry.
Chester Village Volunteer, yeah.
Thank you.
So, and then we were talking to West Hands because they're going through a development agreement process as well, and they have identified a fire pond of some sort on that side.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What do we need to do today?
Chester Fire Department. That's
Chester,
changed.
just-
Chester
Yeah.
District.
Oh, there's no.
That's
Okay.
formally changed.
I just have three other sections quickly to go through, and then I'm done. Yes. So.
What are we getting?
We get the same, the return to municipality is based on the same,
The nameplate capacity.
yeah, same as it is with Central.
Okay, the agreement says it's separate.
Yeah.
I would say it's a more detailed agreement.
Got it, something else.
Yeah, there's a lot of,
Well, they made some
We've
changes,
matured since then. I mean, not us, but the industry.
yeah,
I'm just,
but it's based on the province's regulations, not ours.
okay, what, not into detail, what's the setback from home?
Well, there aren't any, but it's.
We don't have a setback from homes now.
We have setback from property.
So what is
1.5 times from a property.
1.6 here, isn't it?
Yeah.
1.6 for us, I think it was.
Is that similar?
It's the same as it is for subsequent. The same policy.
Okay. I didn't see.
Yeah, no, it's the same policy.
Whatever it is, yeah.
I know that West Hants is dealing with some of that
Well,
setback
yeah,
stuff.
they're,
They have
they're in a slightly different place than we are in this particular.
yeah, and I think there's a pretty wide variety of policies across the province on this. But they are looking at increasing their setback from a dwelling.
We're just
things like
fortunate
that,
this is
but-
in a woodland area. There's no homes around, so it's.
And it's consistent with our existing policy, which we developed.
We developed based on South Canoe. So in the plan review, we developed our policy for DAs around.
Yeah, and this one, because of its location, it's kind of not as big an issue.
Yes.
Okay.
So there's a decommissioning section. So in the event that the developer, say, went bankrupt or something, we put in some protection that's pretty standard for essentially the landowner. If they, and even I guess for when the development ends as well, but so there's some clauses on what they have to do and who's responsible to do it. They need to set up a fund to make sure there's no unexpected costs there for the landowner. And changes and alterations, section 14, that's the non-substantive. So I believe this came up, but there's new MGA language that's development officers that approve those now, not cancel. So we've added, in case there's slight deviations where they actually put things, they can do that without an amendment to the DA. And then there's 12-month extensions for certain timeframes. A year from obtaining development permits. So if they came in and said, this component's delayed, we need another year, the development officer can grant that. Typically, we were hoping for maybe a shorter time frame for those types of things, but like, it sounds like the situation is if there's components that can't come in and their hands are kind of tied, they can tell us that and we can make that determination. And then termination of agreement provides clauses for scenarios where council may discharge the agreement, including timeframes mentioned in the section before that tie together for completion stages of development and timing for remedying breaches of the agreement. And yeah, there's land use bylaw and then the effect, the applicability of the agreements, and then the ownership section 18 is just what certifies that the parties are able to do what they're saying they're going to do. So you do have a recommendation in front of you to enter into the agreement or notice of intention and set a public hearing date for June 27th at 9 a.m.
Make that motion.
Oh, I have a question.
Oh.
Ask the question first.
Not on the motion. Question's on the motion. So, referencing the decommissioning fund, again, I should know this, but is that similar to the South Canoe?
I think this is more robust than some.
I believe it is. So you know what? Congratulations to the municipality of Chester for pursuing that, because that was not in play with South Canoe.
Yeah.
I brought it up at the public hearing, but it was not in play. So thank you. I'm glad.
Yeah,
We
had
okay.
a lot of discussions with the applicant and Sam as well. So
It's important because we see what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you
with
can't
turbines
foresee the future.
and developers. So good.
Eric, Sam review this?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
As I say, it's another level of sophistication.
Oh, yeah.
There's even more about it.
Yes.
And they've had their lawyers involved,
Massive.
there's been a lot of around emails back and forth, to get to where it is today.
Della, what's your motion? Enter into the.
I'm going to read through.
Oh, give notice of
Give
intention.
notice of first reading, second. Okay.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Discussion.
Oh, discussion,
Yes,
sorry.
thank you. Thank you. So again, congratulations that we have a much more robust development agreement. And we are protecting ourselves, I guess, as the property owner. So good on us for protecting ourselves. That's it.
Good. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carried. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
We just made a motion for setting a date.
Oh, I thought that was all in the, it was all in the one motion. It was, give notice of intention, set the date.
Perfect.
It's all there. That's what I heard Adela say.
Yeah,
I did.
that was Paul's recommendation.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I assume so. Okay, so there's one item left before we go in camera, and we're having a darn break just before that. And Tina, you had a committee, I think it was.
No, that would have been EDI.
Okay.
Yeah, we have, it's the church memorial.
Well, we're having a break before we do Church Memorial Park update.
Okay.
You have nothing but free time.